Hi guys, welcome back to the Spurred On podcast, and as we hit the end of the international break, thank the Lord, it's time to give you some more Tottenham transfer rumours. I will talk about some of the biggest and hopefully most reliable rumours that have come out in the press this week. I tried to steer clear of the kind of bloggy, clickbaity ones and try and find the rumours from the kind of journalists that I slightly trust. That's the way I'd put it. But before I get into those rumours, please, once again, if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. But could you please go across to your favourite podcast platform, be that Spotify, Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or wherever, and type in the search bar, the Spurred On podcast, and give me a follow or a subscribe. It really helps me to be able to make this content for you every single weekday and some match reports after games at the weekend as well, and vice versa. If you're listening to this on your favourite podcast platform, please do come across to YouTube. It's at youtube.com/@BarnabySlater_, and you can watch me talk about Tottenham Hotspur every single day. But let's get on to those Tottenham transfer rumours. First up is one that I feel like has been lingering for a while now. We've been linked with quite a lot of Roma players over the years, especially since Mourinho's gone there. And also some of our players have been heavily linked with Roma as well, certainly Eric Dyer. And a little talk about Gio Lo Celso over the past year or so as well. But the player being linked with us is Bryan Cristante. He's 28 years old, and the rumoured fee for him is £26 million. He's a midfielder, and he's been capped 37 times for Italy. Previously played for Milan and Benfica and Atalanta, so he's been around a little bit. And he has got a great right foot. He's quite tall. I quite like him as a player. I do wonder, though, are we realistically going to be looking to buy 27-year-olds? I'm not suggesting 27 is old, but what I'm saying is it strikes me that Big Ange and our current transfer policy is a little younger. We're looking to get kind of hungry young players who are up for not necessarily always being straight into the first team, although, of course, the young signings we've made, such as Van de Ven, have gone straight into the team, but also players who can kind of take their time and maybe replace some of the elder players in the squad. Let's say if they go to the African Cup of Nations, or if we move them on down the line. But as I said, he's got a great right foot. He's very good at through balls and a good shooter from outside the box. Excellent vision. He's a tall, rangy player, as I mentioned. Tends to kind of play in the six. When I've watched him a little bit, he reminds me, not in stature, but of kind of Jorginho, in that he picks up the ball outside, kind of 10, 15 yards outside his penalty area, getting it off the centre-backs. And then one thing that I see him do more than Jorginho does, and maybe I'm only kind of comparing him because they're both Italian, is play kind of first time mid-range balls over the top of the opposition defence for people to run onto. Now that could be something that works really well for our wide players, Deki Kulusevski and Brennan Johnson, if he's playing on the left. So that's something that really impresses me. He's also brave in the tackle and very strong in 50-50s, which is something that may well ingratiate him to the Premier League. I have said in previous transfer videos, I feel like we're looking for players who are stronger, who are a bit bigger, because we've suffered before, obviously, Bryan Hill being a good example of someone who it doesn't seem like is ever going to be able to match the physicality of the Premier League. One thing I'd say about Cristante, he's not the quickest though. So I don't know. That intrigues me. I think we're looking for strong players, but ideally strong players who also have a bit of pace. And I've mentioned that in some of the previous transfer videos as well with players we've been linked with. So how realistic do I think this is? As I said, 27 years old. Obviously, we did buy Vicario, who's 27, but I think it's a bit different with a goalkeeper. Their age can go a bit further up into the mid-30s. So it seems unlikely to me. It seems a little like quite often we get linked with Roma players, they get linked with our players, and maybe that's quite an easy one for agents and recruitment people to leak. So I'm not sure about this one. At £26 million, a player who's never, ever played in the Premier League, how would he deal with the change in the physicality of the Premier League? No one can be sure. So I'm not so sure about this one. Maybe I'll give it a little bit of a 6 out of 10 in terms of likelihood. Second up is something I think is a bit more likely if we were able to get our hands on him. That's Antonio Nusa from Club Brugge, 18 years old. He is a very exciting, dribbly forward, full of technical ability, incredibly skillful on the ball and brave, loves to beat a player. He's the youngest player ever to score on their debut in the Champions League. That's for Club Brugge in a 4-0 away win against Porto. Never an easy place to go, Porto, no matter what kind of team they've got at the time or what form they're in. And it was a great finish across the keeper. Very interesting player. He's played 4 times for Norway already, scored once and made an assist for Erling Haaland. They've got some exciting young players at Norway now, even though they haven't qualified for the Euros. He's very quick, as I said. Great dribbler, loves to beat a man, very brave. Cuts in from the left more often than not. Not afraid to have a shot either. He reminds me a little bit of a taller Marcus Edwards. Do you remember Marcus Edwards? The kind of mini Messi, as Pochettino coined him. He was so exciting at Spurs, but too many behavioural problems meant that he never really got a full chance. He's since gone off to, I think he's in Portugal now at Sporting Lisbon. He'd previously been in Holland, and has kind of ripped it up a little bit there, but also had a few kind of peaks and troughs, which would kind of make sense in terms of someone who behaviourally hasn't always, he's had a difficult upbringing and maybe he's finding it difficult at certain times. Now, the reason I talk about Marcus Edwards like that is, from everything I've read, Antonio Nusa is incredibly professional, and that's why big clubs are circling like vultures, including Tottenham Hotspur. He's a composed finisher. He can play either side, and he's a good crosser as well, as I mentioned in terms of that goal he set up for Norway for Erling Haaland to score. So this is an exciting player. Lots of the big clubs are interested in him, so it makes sense that Tottenham would be, in terms of what I think is that transfer policy now, once again, of going for younger players, exciting players, hungry players, and also, dare I say it, players who will have sell-on value if they reach their peak at Tottenham Hotspur, exactly in the same way that we did with Gareth Bale. We bought him incredibly young. We got him in front of Manchester United, even though Manchester United were interested. Gareth Bale and his dad and his agent decided they wanted him to go somewhere where he would be guaranteed game time. Tottenham Hotspur gave him that game time despite some injuries and poor form at the start, and he became the best version of himself and then got his huge move. So that's why I still think Spurs should be going in now for similar transfer policy. Get young players who are incredibly exciting, wonder kids like Antonio Nusa, get him in the squad, get him some game time, bring them together under Ange, who will let them play their most exciting game, if you want. Let them play it to their potential. Let them be brave. Let them try and take risks. He always says he will take the responsibility for them, and then they can become huge players as a result. So in terms of how realistic this is, I don't know, because other clubs are circling. Let's give it a 7 out of 10, but I'm glad to see us interested and linked with these kind of players again. Another young player that we're linked with, Jude Bellingham, the brother of English superstar wonder kid Jude Bellingham. He's now at Sunderland. He's 18 years old. He came from Birmingham City, where he was signed for £3 million back in the summer. He's a versatile midfielder. I haven't seen a lot of him, but he is rangy like his brother. He's not the quickest, and he is incredibly brave in tackles. Now, what I mean by that is he does a lot of slide tackles in midfield and often wins the ball, but that means he's leaving his feet, which in the Premier League is incredibly dangerous, especially with VAR at the moment. If he mistimes many of those tackles, if he comes to the Premier League, he will see red cards. So can he learn to stay on his feet a bit more? But in terms of his bravery, in 50-50s, can't be doubted. Exciting looking player. Reads the game incredibly well. As I mentioned, because he's not the quickest, what happens quite a lot is it looks like he's about to lose the ball and then he just gets his toe in, beats the man, and in the transition, that's really exciting because it means that they can get breaks and set up players, something that'll be really good for Spurs. He's able to beat the press well because of his legs in midfield. Even though he's not that quick, he takes it on the half turn and he's able to beat players when they're pressing him. He's got good vision and passing. And also, I don't know if you've seen this, but there are lots of rumours about the fact that Jude Bellingham, Joe Bellingham's brother, is a Tottenham fan. There are lots of social media stories and links where Jude Bellingham is replying to some of our players quite a lot. I think James Maddison for one example, and then I think there was a picture of Jude Bellingham playing Football Manager on his computer and playing as Spurs. So maybe if the Bellinghams are Tottenham Hotspur fans and Spurs are interested in Joe Bellingham, then perhaps that is a transfer that could happen. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. He matches the kind of recruitment policy that we're looking for. He's an exciting young player. Let's see if he comes through the door. One more thing I just want to talk about in terms of the transfer rumours that are doing the rounds today, which is Wednesday. Big talk that Giovanni Lo Celso might be interesting Barcelona because they have lost Xavi with an ACL injury. So they'll be looking to replace him in January with someone ideally on loan. Now, this is an unfortunate time for Giovanni Lo Celso if, as I would expect, he would want to move to Barcelona because Tottenham are so short in midfield at the moment and will be even shorter when it comes to January and the African Cup of Nations. So unless Spurs get an offer that they can't refuse for Lo Celso, or unless Ange Postecoglou goes off him, I don't think that's something that's going to happen, and I think that'll be disappointing for Lo Celso because obviously his career at Spurs has been stop-start to say the absolute least. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Would you keep Lo Celso or would you let him go? What kind of loan fee would you be looking for him in January? Because I don't think Barcelona will have the funds to pay a transfer fee for him, especially as they're doing up the new camp at the moment. Anyway, guys, that's been the Tottenham Transfer Rumours. Once again, if you are listening to this on your favourite podcast platform, thank you so much for listening. Please do come across to YouTube too and give me a subscribe. It's at youtube.com/@BarnabySlater. And vice versa. If you're watching on YouTube, please do go to your favourite podcast platform, be that Spotify, Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts, and drop a follow or a subscribe. The podcast goes out much earlier in the day than the YouTube. Because of the YouTube algorithm, the best time to post is 5 p.m, but I post the podcast episode much earlier. So if you want to get your hit a bit earlier, who knows, maybe you do. Please do come across and follow on the podcast platforms. Thanks so much, guys, and most importantly, once again, come on you Spurs.